The story of Detroit has been told countless times all over the world. The rise and the fall are part of the narrative, but it is especially the renewal, the phoenix rising, that has captured people's imaginations. And yeah, I get it. What a story. I know that most of the renewal, most of the hype is focused on the downtown. The renewal of Detroit has not reached most of the people who live here. Here in Detroit, 90% of the population are not white. They rarely go downtown. I want to move past the headlines. I want to find the reality that is Detroit. I want to meet the citizens of this city who are working hard, struggling insistently on making this city more life-sized and perhaps great once again. In a matter of just a few decades, Detroit plummeted from being one of America's most prosperous cities to one of its most dilapidated. The decline of the automobile industry was compounded by various financial crises and municipal mismanagement, and it all pushed the city towards a total collapse, both economic and demographic. The city declared bankruptcy in 2013. From a peak of almost 2 million inhabitants in the 1950s, Detroit's population dropped to less than 700,000. Recently, however, Detroit began to make headlines that had an optimistic flavor as the city struggled to rise again. It's been called the greatest comeback in history, the land of opportunity, the next Brooklyn, and so on and so on. The fact of the matter is that Detroit is still struggling. And I mean really struggling. Its recovery has been uneven and lopsided, which has only increased inequity. The struggle has affected and redefined the entire region, including its Canadian neighbour city of Windsor, Ontario, just across the river. Because the decline of the auto industry wasn't just a local thing. Far from it. For me, it's a unique opportunity to look at how two very different political contexts can influence similar stories of urban decline. But we'll get back to Windsor a bit later. To grasp Detroit's complexity, we have to understand how deeply divided the city is. It has so many fragmented and disconnected pieces that are home to so many distinct identities.
We tend to describe where we grow up at the street intersection, right? So I grew up at Joy Road in Greenfield.
You literally just drop a pin on a map and that's where I'm from.
And that's where you're from. But I think we were in the top 5 most dangerous zip codes in the country.
Let me be very clear. Eric's neighborhood on the west side was so dangerous that even the local McDonald's was a no-go zone. They called it the Murder Mac in the local parlance. Luckily, Eric got out, went to college, found success, the classic American dream story. But his story is a rare one. It's not like that for most Detroiters. This city is plagued by poverty, racism, inequity. Yeah, daily life is tough here, man. Very tough.
Everything's super divided, color-wise, economically, even in the town. If you look around here, and this is just a beautiful town. We're gonna get to a street and then make a left turn, and it's gonna be a completely different town. It's a lot of different cities, right? It's not really like a tale of two Detroits that you hear every once in a while. It's more of like 30 Detroits, right? This building is brand new. I mean, this building just opened up maybe a month ago. Brand new modular, structure and construction. It looks like it could be anywhere in the world. But then literally across the street, you have like steps falling down and emptiness.
And lots where there were buildings and which are now gone.
It's not because people don't care. I think it's because when you're in survival mode, you have other things to worry about. Your values become very different when your life is at stake.
Right.
When food is a core concern, the lawn is not so much.
Yeah, right. Is Detroit good with 630,000, or do you think it needs to scale back up?
It does need to scale back up.
It does?
Because it's hard for the city to maintain itself with the tax base that it has.
Right.
Which is why you see infrastructural damage and all of this stuff that's not being adequately taken care of. People cheering for stuff that's supposed to be regular as hell. People were so excited when we got streetlights. I'm like, we're supposed to have streetlights.
Yeah, that's
like,
a normal thing.
That's a normal thing to have, is streetlights.
Eric, you work in marketing, and by definition, marketing is optimism and broadcasting optimism. How much of everything I've been hearing about Detroit, you know, the rise, the fall, the renewal, how much of it is hype?
There are areas in Detroit that are clearly making a comeback. There are areas in Detroit that are clearly forgotten about. You have this economic resurgence, this comeback. And the question becomes, who is it for?
And that is an excellent question. Think about it. Hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing into the city, revitalizing the waterfront, building a new sports stadium, new high-end condos, fancy restaurants. The investments are real, but they are, for the most part, spent in and around the downtown core, and not, unfortunately, where the majority actually lives.
They were so excited about having things like the Q line and some of these new niche coffee shops and hipster sit-down restaurants with chicken skins on things and stuff. If you like the Tigers and you like the Q line and you like downtown, you don't like Detroit.
Yeah.
You don't like Detroiters. You clutch your purse when you see a black person walk by. You do everything you can to avoid eye contact when I look at you, to acknowledge you as a person, and you slink away really quickly.
Dear, yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, you know, it's like I'm 5'7". You know, I got a ponytail. Like, I'm not that scary. I'm wearing a suit every day.
I think it's pretty easy to identify in Detroit the challenges.
Yeah, there's challenges.
You know, and at the top of the list, of course, racial and economic inequality. Do you think like urban planning could also help solve it now?
When you look at the population of Detroit, the region actually hasn't changed population size much. It's just the city.
Right.
The city drained into the surrounding areas, but it's the same amount of people. So all of that wealth, all of those people, all of that stuff is still here.
Yeah.
It's just not inside of the city. Detroit is a city that is being revitalized, but it's not being revived. It's a thriving, moving, ever-shifting city that is in need of some support. And I think if you talk about supporting the city, more than we talk about saving the city, I think you'd have better response. There's nothing like the people.
Hey. Strange people walking past with the camera, sorry.
Nothing strange here, just the boom mic and some foreigners.
I graduated today.
Oh,
Hey.
my man.
Congratulations.
Making moves.
Nice one, man.
Right. The best thing about Detroit is the people in Detroit. They're not just interesting, but they're multifaceted. You'll meet somebody who is a roofer and a painter. You'll meet a teacher who's a rapper, an activist who's a gardener.
Yeah.
You get these crazy mashups of folks.
That sounds like resilience on a scale that you don't see in many other places.
It's because I think we've been in a state of transition for 60 years. People are thriving without things, and they're creating things here that you don't see in other places because they have to. That's one of the reasons why I stay here, because I think that our young people, as they grow, they need somebody who's looking out for their best interests, long term.
It is easy to talk about public transport in Detroit because it sucks. It really is one of the worst systems in the country. Back in the day, Detroit had the choice between a subway or what they ended up calling a people mover, a weird elevated system that looks like something you would see in an amusement park. Doesn't move a lot of people very efficiently at all. More recently, there's a new streetcar line running into the city center, but it is nothing more than a vanity project and an expensive one. In between that, you have the daily lives of the citizens. Most of them live in the neighborhoods around downtown, but they don't come here for work. Most of the jobs are in the surrounding cities. But in order to get there, they have to tackle two different bus systems that don't work together. The Detroit system takes people into downtown and around the city. There they have to connect up with the ironically named SMART system, the regional bus system, which is nothing more than a shuttle bus system from the other cities to Detroit. It doesn't pick up people along the way. The scale of inequality in the city is massive, racial, economic. The last thing they need is inequality in mobility. Make your way around Detroit's various neighborhoods and you'll clearly see how bruised and battered they are. there are more than 62 square kilometers of vacant land and some 24,000, yeah, I said 24,000 abandoned houses to this day. Tired of waiting for the city to do something about all of this blight, a man named John George took matters into his own hands.
Justin, get a crew on this with some flathead shovels. Okay, people, let's do this. Let's go. We're gonna get everything out of the driveway.
30 years ago, a vacant house right next to John's home suddenly became a crack den. So, understandably, with the help of neighbors, he boarded up the place. The dealers and users never came back. Just like that, Blight Busters was born, and they haven't stopped their good deeds ever since. Today, they're helping a single mother by tearing down a derelict and dangerous garage and boarding up the vacant house next door.
You got that? And put the dirt in the truck.
This used to be just homes the entire way along. Then this empty spot was homes, and they're gone now. Other side of the street as well. Is it struggling, this neighborhood, to survive, or is it kind of stable now?
You're right. This neighborhood was populated with people. There's a lot of reasons why people left, and that's why we have so much work to do, because at one point we had almost 2 million people cutting their grass and taking out their trash and maintaining their property. So just imagine, you know, 1 million people get up and leave.
Yeah.
So the 700,000 of us that are left, we either can ignore it, move, or do something about it.
Yeah.
We decided to do something about it. When you're done with this, I want you to hit the backyard. Come on, Justin, where's those snips at, baby boy? Let's go, let's go, let's go.
I mean, we've been here for about 4 minutes, and they're going for it. This is insane. This is awesome. What is the art of busting blight?
Well,
How do you
what
describe
it is?
that?
Well, it's really all about spreading the Detroit love. A blight is like a cancer, a virus. If you don't stop it, it spreads. There are things that need to be around a home, and there are other things that shouldn't be around a home. We don't want drug dealers going in here. So this is a preventive measure until such time we can do better. If we secure this, maybe they'll go to another neighborhood or to another house or get discouraged and leave altogether.
Yeah.
But as a father, as a husband, as a human being, I have a moral obligation to my neighbors and to this city and to the children which live in this city to do whatever I can to make it as safe as possible. Yep. Excellent. Our work is a work that stabilizes a community and creates opportunity for people to invest. If it wasn't for the work that Blight Busters and others have done in this community, there'd be nothing left. There would be no coffee shop, there would be no theater, there would be no resource center, there would be nothing. And because we have been fighting this battle in this area for so long.
Over the years, Blight Busters has raised more than $20 million through fundraising and donations. They've demolished and boarded up abandoned buildings, they've renovated houses, helped people keep their homes, invested in local businesses, and even revitalized the entire neighborhood of Old Redford, where they now have their headquarters.
Is it important to do this neighborhood by neighborhood, house, yard by house and yard? I mean, is that really the small bricks in the big structure?
Well, of course. You know, what is the city but the people? If the people don't feel comfortable in their own home and in their own neighborhood, on their own block, they're gonna leave. Why do you think over 1 million people left? What we wanna do is encourage the folks that have stuck it out to stay and improve what they have. And at the same time, we want to attract commercial investment and other homeowners to live in this community. Okay, all right, come on, you guys. Everybody get on this. Everybody get a piece. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. All right, hold on, guys. Let's do this. Gordon, hold on.
This guy is awesome.
Yeah, he likes his work too, doesn't he?
Yeah. I'm glad to see the garage go.
Yeah.
It's one less safety issue.
It's pretty sparsely populated now because some of the houses are gone. Do you know any of your neighbors around here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's still like a community?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody know everybody. Everybody help everybody.
How long have you lived in Detroit?
Born and raised here.
Really?
Born and raised here 38 years. The area that I grew up in the crime was starting to get worse. So it was time to move.
I mean, what's it like here for crime compared to where you grew up?
Compared to 30th Street and compared to Warren Avenue, this is almost like the suburb.
And you feel safer here?
Yeah, I mean, when I first moved over here, we didn't get a lot of police presence.
Right.
So you can't really do too much of anything or mess with anybody's kids or anything like that, because we're gonna see it, we're gonna report it. I never heard of John George till I moved over here. He's like one of the first people that welcomed us. So for John to do this, it means a lot to me because I'm disabled. I have seizures. So when you're working on a fixed income and you're trying to maintain a house, you do the best you can.
Blight Busters is such an inspiring project that it has managed to build a team of more than 9,000 volunteers, year in, year out. And their youth employment program, along with the reinsertion initiative, are giving opportunities where there once was no hope at all.
I believe that in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have the blighted homes under control, either renovated, removed, or secured. Once you eliminate that negative energy, the assets that are left will pay dividends, and those values will go up because people want to live around renovated housing and clean, decent neighborhoods and beautiful parks.
What can the rest of the world learn from Detroit?
Never give up, never quit, never say never.
The most iconic view of Detroit is from a different country, from here in Windsor, Ontario. The border between Canada and the United States runs right down the middle of the Detroit River behind me. This is the busiest crossing between Canada and the US by far. It's this close proximity that makes it easy to understand how Windsor piggybacked on the rise of Detroit in the 20th century. This is a tale of two cities, absolutely, but it is an incredibly one-sided relationship, and that can never be healthy. Everything that is happening over there in big Detroit is also happening here in Windsor, whether they like it or not. They don't have the same massive racial inequality that they do in Detroit. They have the Canadian social system to help take care of the citizens who are struggling here. But Windsor is at a loss. It's as though they're trying to figure out what they are.
Because, you see, since the early 2000s, as the auto industry struggled, the province of Ontario has lost something like 300,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector. And no region has been harder hit than Windsor. Like Detroit, people here simply packed up and left. Houses and commercial buildings were abandoned. This isn't exactly Detroit, sure, but downtown Windsor was hit hard. 25% of commercial buildings are still empty. As this district is struggling with a lack of resources, many houses simply need care. Luckily, passionate citizens are uniting to fix the problem.
Okay, there's a lot of action here.
Yes, we got a lot going on today. This is our Little Things Matter program. It is our third project that we've been doing. Basically what that is an opportunity for surrounding small businesses and residents to get together and work on little projects around the neighborhood. This one is actually probably one of our biggest.
Yeah, it looks pretty big, yeah.
Yeah, but what the homeowner did is apply through a micro grant, and so they pay through 50% and we pay for the other 50%. We get all the labor, we get all the volunteers, materials as much as we can, and then we help them fix up their house.
And these are all volunteers here today?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Little Things Matter is run by the Downtown Windsor Community Collaborative, which aims at revitalizing the city center. Sarah and her team believe that giving houses a new lease on life and beautifying a neighborhood is a question of comfort and security, but also one of pride.
Why does this have to come down?
The gentleman here who owns this house, he's been living in our neighborhood for a long time, and his house is old. It's things are coming down, things are falling apart. He got a ticket from the city that his porch was dilapidated coming down. He needed to replace it, so we paid to replace it. But not everyone can afford to do multiple fixes on their house in 1 year, and so we got a ticket on the addition on his house. And so he couldn't afford to pay it, and he was gonna have to go to court. And actually the city referred him to us to get it fixed. So we're fixing this today so that he can stay in his house and not have to go to court anymore.
In a nutshell, I'm helping them demolish a rundown, dangerous section of the house and closing it off so the homeowner is not forced to move out.
Inevitably, with a downtown our size, we've got people with skills in construction, in demo. So that's basically how we're doing this, is we put out our network to try to find people in the neighborhood who care and who want to tear down a house.
I think think over the years there's been a lot of disinvestment from the downtown, so a lot of people moving out to the suburbs, not just people, but services or our arena and a lot of different things. And I think they've been trying to reverse the trend and start to reinvest, but it still hasn't quite gotten there yet. And so it's really important for projects like this and also even organizations to encourage people to stay here, to live and make the neighborhood a better place.
So I mean, you're struggling with a branding of the city, but you're struggling with real, tangible urbanist issues like density and making it a nice place.
I think though it's about like shifting the focus and saying that like we're actually a suburb of Detroit. Like when you look at what Windsor has to offer, like the downtown in particular, I can get on my bike, I can ride 10 minutes, hop on the tunnel bus from there, get on the Q line, and be at Little Caesars Arena and be watching a concert within about like a half an hour to 45 minutes.
I mean, but you're saying things that Windsor has to offer, and your example was going to Detroit to go listen. I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
I think that is an asset of Windsor, though. Okay, I think that like we need to see it that way. Yeah. I mean, Windsor does have a lot to offer in and of itself. I think Detroit is part of that. I think that we need to see Detroit as our friend, as our sister, and we have a lot of dual citizens, and so it's part of our fabric. We're not as Canadian as the rest of Canada in a lot of ways.
How does Detroit regard you?
To be honest, when I talk to people in Detroit, we're not as much of a factor for them. So they don't have the same, like, oh, let's go to Windsor for the weekend.
What's it like living in the shadow of a big American city?
Windsor's history mirrors a lot of Detroit's history. Like, both Windsor and Detroit make things. They're known for manufacturing, they're known for the automotive stuff. And so, like, I wouldn't say we are in the shadow. I think it's a shared identity.
We both really went through the recession together. We both are growing and trying to come back, and we're learning from each other's strategies.
Around 15,000 people live in the city center where Sarah's organization operates. Most of these citizens exist on a low income, and 35% of the children live below the poverty line. Unfortunately, they're often forgotten by the municipality. But Sarah sees the place, and rightfully so, as the core of the city. Because poor or not, the city center is the heart of any city. And if you want urban renewal, real urban renewal, let me tell you, this is where you have to start, as long as you do it right.
Is Windsor broke? Are they struggling to find funds? Is there a lack of staff? I mean, what do you think the issue is with the city?
I think at its core, it might be an issue of priorities, because Windsor is actually experiencing an economic boom right now. We have low unemployment. Our housing market has been really, really improving, and it's been a good time. I think it's about the priorities. This past year we had an item come to council with less than 5 days' notice to spend $3 million on Christmas lights. And the outcry from like our neighborhood, from other neighborhoods was like, we need that money for alley lights, not Christmas lights.
And $3 million too, right?
$3 million, yeah.
So what does the city focus on if they have maybe their priorities a little bit off? I mean, Christmas lights for $3 million. I mean, what else is the city doing that they think is a good idea?
Our city likes to focus on like the big legacy projects, like the vanity stuff that makes us look good and makes us look good to tourists, but aren't always things that the residents actually use or want.
So Sarah's organization is bridging that gap. And they do much more than just fix houses. They lead sports and fitness programs for all ages. They run a cafe, organize movie nights in the park, provide community gardens and a farmer's market. They've even convinced people to participate in neighborhood cleanups. That's massive. The idea is to create community engagement and a sense of belonging by giving people things to do and reasons to care.
This is the second project for our Little Things Matter project.
Right.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey. I mean, a lot of these projects are urban acupuncture, fixing all these different little things. How does it work into the future of Windsor?
We always say that we're not in it for a sprint, we're in it for a marathon. So that means that the impact that we're doing right now is going to be seen in 10, 20 years. Because what we're trying to do is build a foundation of people who care about the neighborhood, and that's the long-term vision that we have, is making a connected community, because there's always going to be problems, there's always going to be stuff to fix. You're never going to solve everything by even the Little Things Matter program, but what you really want is a group of people who will be there when it's good and when it's bad, and you can call on as friends.
And man, the citizens clearly have their work cut out for them. Somehow it really looks and feels like some municipal decisions here are made in order to empty out the city center. One of these odd moves is a new mega hospital, located 15 kilometers away from the city center, past the airport, replacing the two smaller ones in the central neighborhoods. Now that the masses have moved to the suburbs, the resources are following. But for what? All over the world, we know we need more people in the cities, not around them. It's simple urban logic. But the shopping mall outside the city center has gone through numerous expansions at the expense of smaller neighborhood merchants. Yeah, the car still reigns supreme in Windsor. Only 3.4% of commuters use public transport, ranking Windsor last among mid-sized metropolitan areas in Canada in terms of public transport usage. And it sure doesn't help when you kick out small businesses just to add 43 parking spots in an already underused parking garage.
The car is so prevalent in people's mind that parking then by extension is so prevalent, which then means that we're looking at parking as the departure for anything to happen. Yeah. Which is so ass backwards, it doesn't make any sense, because nobody's gonna come to downtown to park to do nothing.
Yeah, it's just, there's no logic.
Like, no.
Sanisha, a young architect, has decided to come back to live in Windsor after a few years in Toronto. He works in Detroit, but he is relentlessly trying to revive his city.
Here were storefronts. So there's a
right
large,
here?
right here, the Pride offices were here. We had a thriving hair salon, women's hair salon that's been here for years. And there was a number of other storefronts that have been here for roughly 20 years. They basically suffocated the tenants out. They had offers on the table to buy the structure from the city, to renovate the storefronts.
When was this done? I mean, they took out all these shops and offices and...
This is within last 3 months.
Okay, this is really recent.
Yes, just not what you want from an urban point of view. It's just absolutely worst case scenario.
So who did that? Who made the call? The mayor, the city council?
City council and mayor, yeah.
Young, creative people like Sanisha are doing their own thing, navigating the city's somewhat inadequate planning. The Denial Art Gallery, for example, invited artists to paint murals in an alleyway, hoping to give a new life to a derelict place. And hey, now it's covered with works by artists from around the world. Business owners here have even made their own TV ad to attract young professionals to the city.
We're doing basically guerrilla branding for the city. We're just kind of seeing what is here and what it can be, and unapologetically going for it. We're at a definite crossroads right now, and I think it's really important that the next generation, that we don't test their patience and give them the sort of platform to really test their ideas and go forward.
Just a few kilometers from the city center, the neighborhood of Ford City is experiencing an unexpected renaissance. This once industrial district was established by the Ford Motor Company in the early 1900s. It thrived for a few decades until Ford closed its plant in the 1950s. The neighborhood rapidly declined, becoming one of the poorest areas in the entire city. After years of struggle, it's now making an impressive comeback.
There was a building there at some point, and you know, in many cities, you would there would be a fence. Yeah. Somebody owns that. Yeah. Property owner says, stay off my land. But here, you know, it's wide open, it's grass, it could be a park. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really interesting.
All of these spaces become impromptu sort of gathering spaces. There's a street fest that happens here, and every one of these spaces gets taken over by a different use. Windsor's had this notion of having to invent, you know, Windsor-made ideas, you know, Windsor solution for Windsor problem or whatever. Well, it's kind of BS because, you know, I work in Detroit. I see how things are happening there. I see the progress that's being made. I lived in Toronto. I've seen how that happens. I've traveled all over the world. There's no reason why we should not be borrowing from other places that work. Most people from here, from Windsor, are gonna go across the border. They're gonna go to a Tigers game. They're gonna be downtown Detroit. And then there's no rhyme or reason why we should not be transplanting all those ideas as much as possible.
I mean, it's not a long commute, I know, but I mean, what's your reasoning for living here and working in Detroit?
We have problems here, but they're in a different magnitude, and magnitude is much less. Because our political system, our economic system, they have a totally different undercurrent. We don't see the people that are at a lower economic standing being without any safety net.
The street festival has been a huge success. But the shift in Ford City is much stronger than just one event on one street. Sinisha and other like-minded people have ideas and projects that will benefit the neighborhood in the long run. Small shops and local businesses are already blooming.
Hi, Michael. Hey. What has been the experience for you opening a tequila taco place in this neighborhood?
You know, the experience has just been overwhelming. You know, when Shane and I and Chef sat down, it really was an amalgamation of the same ideologies, which was building a community around building someplace the community can have to celebrate.
You're talking about community. That's like almost the first word out of your mouth, right?
It is very much. Restaurants are places for people to come and share ideas and communicate and have fun. And even with that, there's community gardens we're looking to help with, some after-school programs as well. We hope to be very involved with the community. How do you gentrify an area that has so many vacancies?
Yeah.
And we're not pushing anybody out, we're trying to pull them in.
You're sewing the fabric back together as opposed to blowing it apart, right?
I'm not a very good seamstress, but I can make a drink. So
Yeah.
I think there is a misconception as to what Windsor is by Windsorites themselves. We have an incredibly great arts community. We have awesome chefs, we have really cool bands, we have great artists, and you know they tend to leave and go everywhere else because it's never been done here before. But if we can show people in our small way that it can be done here, then we have the growth. And sometimes it takes the city to get right to rock bottom, where we've probably been at some point, with one of the highest unemployment rates in the country, if not the highest, to really give us the ability to do that.
Now this is my type of community. The guys from the cantina are throwing a barbecue in a vacant lot. And vacant lots here are not hard to find. Tom and his crew provide food and drinks so people can get to know each other and even have a chat with the district's city councilor.
How much of your work as a city council is your own ideas and moving forward, or playing catch up with the citizens who seem to be they have the lead at the moment?
We play catch up, but I think we're finally getting to the leadership, to the corporate leadership team in the mayor's office, about how important it is to revive communities like this, like Ford City, like Sandwich, like downtown Glengarry Marintet, and what that means to the actual health of the entire city. And so it's not just benefiting the downtown; it's benefiting everyone else in the city. So I think that message is finally getting through.
So, Detroit, Windsor, a tale of two cities. How much inspiration do you get from what's happening in Detroit?
I think the big inspiration is the people. It's citizen-led. We're talking about a city that went through the biggest bankruptcy in American history type of thing, but it's the citizens. It was the people who lived there that resuscitated it. And I think that's something that we look to as an inspiration, and a lot of people look to as inspiration, saying, well, if they can do it there, maybe we can do it in Ford City, maybe we can do it in some of these more maybe neglected neighborhoods.
One of the things that is happening in this age of urbanism is that our focus is narrowing. We are thinking local. It is neighborhood by neighborhood, citizen by citizen. Perhaps this is the moment where Windsor will finally take control of its own destiny, finally emerge from the economic and psychological shadow of the big brother across the river. It is a steep uphill battle, but if the people I've met here are any indication, the journey is well underway.
Citizens are leading the way in both cities. But Windsor has a few advantages on Detroit: its scale, its political system, and its social cohesion. The long and complex history of race in the United States has left deep scars on its people, and of course, on its cities.
Like in many American cities and other cities around the world, urban planning was used as a divider to segregate wealth brackets, segregate races. And one of the classic, iconic examples and infamous examples is 8 Mile Road.
8 Mile Road is a 32-kilometer-long, 8-lane street that crosses the metro area. It's a physical line, sure, but it is also a hard psychological and cultural barrier. As the northern border of the city of Detroit, it separates the predominantly African-American urban core from the more white, upper-class suburbs to the north. It's much more than a road. It's a division between two realities.
Morning.
Morning, guys.
You see folks that look like me getting their morning exercise. These are things that they couldn't do just 10 years ago. So if you're planning the city, you want to see it from everybody's perspective, from the pedestrian's perspective, from the cyclist's perspective, from the motor vehicle perspective.
When Maurice Cox took over Detroit's planning and development department a few years ago, he faced what seemed like an insurmountable task: fixing a city that had suffered decades of decay and a major bankruptcy. But Maurice saw this as an opportunity to build a different city. The starting point? The DeQuinder Cut, an abandoned railway line that was converted into a park in 2009, with mild success. But then Maurice and his team extended the park, linked it to a whole new network of bike paths and walking trails. And it worked. People came, a lot of people, and it became an integral part of daily life.
It also functions as transport?
Yeah, absolutely. And we think that it's changing the economics of neighborhoods adjacent to it, where people want to live next to this kind of greenway. We're starting to see housing development happen that's literally facing onto the cut.
The DeQuinder Cut is one of the many greenways that will soon connect different parts of the city, including the city center. Maurice hopes to implement the simple concept of 20-minute neighborhoods. Basically, communities in which you can walk or bike to get anything you need in less than 20 minutes. In short, life-size pockets that don't require a car. Oh, music to my ears.
The recovery starts at the heart of the city, and the heart of the city is its downtown. But I'm very fond of reminding people that the soul of a city resides in its neighborhoods. How do we take some of the qualities of downtown, which are walkable, transit, lots of destinations to go to, and how do we take that into the neighborhoods that are predominantly African American and will be so for decades to come? Hey.
Morning.
So African Americans wear spandex as well.
Yeah.
We get to build a new kind of neighborhood because we can go into a neighborhood and do an initiative that engages 20 acres, 30 acres, 50 acres. How many places in the world can you go into an urbanized neighborhood and come in with a strategy at that scale?
How do you fund all of this now? I mean, Detroit is now balanced and they're moving upwards financially.
Incredible thing about going through a structured bankruptcy is you bury billions of dollars of debt and you are come out of it debt-free. Cities don't die, cities regenerate. The city can be a place of experimentation. The city can be a laboratory for new ideas. And the city can be open and welcoming to everyone. You don't have to be a wealthy city to innovate. This is going to be a greener city. There's going to be more acreage of open space per resident than most cities could achieve. And these are the kind of quality of life amenities that I think that are going to give cities that have lost population over decades a new lease on life. If we can show that majority African American cities are healthy places, these are places where the quality of life is extraordinarily high. You know, race becomes a little less of a factor by just doing that.
The work being done here is precious, and that's necessary in a city that desperately needs leadership. The municipality has far too often neglected its citizens, even with providing basic vital services like access to water. It's a huge challenge to maintain a 360 square kilometer water network. With the population decline, about 700,000 taxpayers are essentially paying for a system that was built for 2 million people, and the price of water has skyrocketed. Today, in a city with over 40% of its population living in poverty, many can't even afford water.
So what's the scale of the problem here in Detroit? How many people have had their water cut off, and how many people are scheduled to have it turned off, as it were?
Well, since 2014, you've had over 100,000 households shut off from water.
Get out.
And what the water department estimates is there is anywhere from 2.7 to 3 people per household. So you're looking at about 300,000 people or more shut off from water. And then in this year alone, we're looking at between 17 and 18,000 households shut off. So you're also looking at another additional 40 to 50,000 people shut off from water.
Monica Lewis Patrick co-founded We the People of Detroit, a collective of activists, researchers, academics, and, well, regular citizens working together to ensure social justice and human rights. They raise funds, collect and distribute water, assist people with their water bill payments, and advocate for a more equitable system. They are doing everything they can to fight this outrageous crisis.
A lot of folks who are out here struggling around water, they already feel disconnected and isolated, and for some people, it makes them feel shamed. So it becomes really important not just to drop the water off, but to say, yo, how you doing, you know?
In 73 hours, if you don't have running water, you lose custody of your children, and you can also lose your property. To get your water shut off in the city of Detroit, you only need to owe a bill of $150 or more and be 30 days in the rear to have your water shut off.
That's it.
But you've got corporations that owe millions of dollars. Say, for instance, the state of Michigan owes the city of Detroit $5 million just on the state fairground properties alone. $2 million on Dexter Amherst recreational facility. So just on 2 properties, they owe Detroit $7 million, and they were able to have their debt renegotiated and much of it forgiven during the bankruptcy. And the list goes on and on. The city golf course, over $440,000 in unpaid water bill.
So you began to see that this stuff makes no sense, and it's not about a real emergency around water. It's an emergency around greedy folks getting paid and people who really need water and really need to take care of themselves not being able to get the resources that they need. Folks are trying to cover their utilities, cover their rent, cover their health expenses and all those kinds of stuff, and then you're gonna cut off the water and act like that's okay. Come on.
We the People of Detroit runs 4 distribution centers where people can get free water. They also deliver to those who don't have access to transport. Over the course of a year, they can distribute up to 200 tons of water to citizens in need.
How you doing? Just bringing and dropping off the water today. You doing all right?
Yeah.
Hi,
how are you? Thank you.
No problem. I'm just helping these guys. They're doing the work. When did you get your water turned off?
It's been almost a year.
About a year. Wow.
Yeah. It was a crazy set of circumstances. It just went haywire fast.
Yeah. But it's haywire for a lot of people in Detroit, huh?
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing.
So that's not a bad thing, getting some water from
No,
from
actually,
these
this
good
is a blessing.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Cinnamon. You get back. Move. Yeah,
And Cinnamon needs
she
water
waiting
too.
on the water too.
Yeah, right.
Cinnamon needs water too.
Yeah. What other options would you have if you couldn't get water from We the People?
Well, I would have to wait for food stamp day.
Right.
Then to buy it.
Yeah.
But a couple of times I had to go try to get water from other people's water holes from their house. And I don't have a car anymore, so it just made it impossible to do it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I can't walk 5 miles with 5 gallons of water. It just wasn't feasible.
Antoinette's story is, sadly, all too common in this city. But Monica and her organization are working hard towards a long-term solution. They're pushing for a water affordability plan and urging the city to adopt and implement it.
What we've got to decide is, as communities and as humanity, are we willing to ensure that every human life has access to this life-sustaining resource called water? The water affordability plan being put in place would mean that everybody would pay into the system. It's just low-income people would be able to pay into the system what they could afford. And what the recommendations are is that poor people should not be paying more than 3.5 to 4.7% of their income to access water. On average in Detroit, you have low-income families paying anywhere from 10% of their income upward to access water. And that's why you see so many houses without the water. It's because the water is unaffordable. Water costs have gone up 126% over the last 10 years. And so what we're saying needs to happen is people can actually pay a limited amount on the bill and be able to maintain water access, and therefore there's water and sanitation for everybody. Nobody's water is off, and the actual system recovers more money by making it affordable.
This narrative of a brand new Detroit, and this is the model for how you turn around a city. You can't turn around a city if you're going to throw half of your people to the dogs. You just can't do that. And so yes, we got to be out here working on water, we got to be out here working on air, we out here working on a multiplicity of issues.
As Monica went around the city, she noticed dozens of houses connected to the one house that had water.
When you see the water hoses running from house to house, I would just cry from house to house seeing that kind of devastation. And the young people were able to reframe it and say, Mama Monica, look at it differently. Look at that as our own pipeline of belovedness in Detroit, where we are willing, even with those that have very little, to share the little that we have to create a lifeline for somebody else. Regardless of the brokenness and the glass and the debris, there is this deep connectedness and infrastructure of belovedness that we not only love each other, we dearly love each other in Detroit.
The strong, no, let me say powerful community engagement in Detroit is doing nothing short of holding this broken city together. Today, 30,000 people have no access to a grocery store. 48% of the population even faces food insecurity on a daily basis. That means that they don't have access to a sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food where they live. So what do you do if you don't have a reliable source of food to feed yourself and your family? You guessed it. You grow your own.
This is the largest urban farm in the state of Michigan.
I can see crops going into the distance, but how big is this farm?
It's about 7 acres.
7 acres?
Yeah. We don't own the land here.
Okay.
We have a license agreement with the city of Detroit. We see this land as a commons. You know, it's not owned as us, as an organization or as individuals. It's owned by the community because we're rooted in the community. This is not just our project. We're doing it for the greater good, for the broader collective. It's for all of Detroit, particularly Black Detroit.
Shakara is a member of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network, an organization that provides access to affordable and healthy food. One of their flagship projects is D-Town Farm. It might look like we're out in the country, but this massive urban farm is located in the heart of the city.
We grow 2 types of kale, we grow 2 types of collard greens. Over here we have salad mix, and this is spinach, a carrot top.
Oh, yeah. This project's amazing. I mean, but I would imagine it could be scaled up and you know, have small urban farms all over Detroit where there used to be homes.
Yeah, actually, so the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network started out helping people or helping families start their own gardens in their backyards.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're looking to revive that program because it's important for people to have access to food, not just coming here, but in their own backyard, on their lawns. We want to decentralize the food growing process. With the exit of the white population out of the city came the flight of grocery stores, came the flight of quality public educational institutions. All the public resources left with the white population. This Black founded urban ag institution is an example of clapping back to the system and saying, okay, well, if you're not going to provide for us as you should, then we're going to provide for ourselves. We like to call it food sovereignty. It emphasizes the human right of people to grow their own food, to have control over our land, our water, and also it focuses on our autonomy as communities to live freely and build our cultural realities on food. The gentrification that's happening in the city has sort of welcomed back these grocery stores, but they're high-end grocery stores, caters to a particular clientele that doesn't include a majority of Detroit.
Right.
And since Detroit is about 83% African American, it's like what are those people eating? Where is their food coming from?
D-Town Farm sells affordable organic produce on location and in nearby markets. Citizens can volunteer their time here in exchange for fresh fruit and vegetables. They're also piecing together a new project, Detroit's People Food Co-op, a grocery store owned by its members.
It's a self-determination project. Part of what this is modeling how Black people can work together, led by Black people, conceptualized by Black people, most of the work done by Black. And you know, we kind of need these models of how we work together because we live in a society that consciously works against that kind of cooperation. It's our hope that this spirit of self-determination will carry over into other things. That people say, you know, oh, if we can grow our own food, you know, growing something that actually sustains our lives, maybe we can create schools, or maybe we can make clothes. We're clearly reshaping how people think about cities, but not in opposition to what happens in countryside,
sure, yeah.
but more in a complementary fashion.
What a town. Detroit is absolutely in that league of cities facing the most extreme urban challenges in the world. Failed urban planning was one of the root causes of Detroit's decline, but urban planning remains one of the most important tools to get this city back on track. It's bruised and battered. There are broken bones, but this city is very much alive. I hear the same thing when I travel the world with the Life-Size City. Our people are our most valuable resource, and that is an absolute truth in every city in the world. But the people of Detroit, they are fighters like nobody else. They have an incredible energy and intensity and a dogged determination, and it's contagious. I don't know if Detroit will rise again to the same levels of greatness as in bygone days, and I don't even know if it needs to. Perhaps we should just hope that this city simply becomes good, solid, and fair to all of the people who live here.